This is the talk I gave at the 100th anniversary of the ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps at the University of Akron. Of course, I got my commission there in 1950 and as a second lieutenant. And there was something like 500 young people, young men and women, in military courses at the University of Akron, not all in ROTC. But with the ROTC and those young students that got full ride scholarships, they're committed to 6 years after they graduate and they get their commission as a second lieutenant. When they become a second lieutenant, they wear the little gold bars. And they don't weigh very much. I'm holding in my hand right now. But when they're pinned onto the shoulders, they become heavy. Because now you've got responsibility, leadership, training, continual training. And the heaviest part is the pride that you get from becoming an officer in the United States military. And the other heavy part is legacy. The legacy that is sent down to you by many young men and I'll add women now, that over the years they built this legacy and they're handing it down to you, but you're now charged, I told the students, with building your own legacy that you can hand off to people, to the young people coming after you. Now, President Reagan once said he was commemorating memory of those who fell during D-Day, Omaha Beach and other beaches. And he said real loud, "Where do we find these men?" Then he said it again on television when he was giving the Congressional Medal of Honor to a soldier. And he said it again, put his arms out, he says, "Where do we find such men?" And that came from President Reagan having been an actor. He got that phrase from a book written, The Bridges of Toko-Ri. It was a battle that happened during the Korean War. And it was also made into a movie. And the book was written by James Michener, who also wrote Tales of the South Pacific. It became a musical, South Pacific. And he wrote that, and he concentrated on the men who were flying that terrible mission that day to take out the bridges of Toko-Ri. And it also became a movie. We had casualties during that attack, daytime attack, because the Chinese and the Korean were defending it with missiles, tremendous firepower, yet the young men, the young pilots went in and tried to take it out. Of course, some were shot down, and the movie told the whole story about this. So that's where President Reagan got that. Where do we find such men? Then also, they decided, because it was too dangerous to try to attack bridges of Toko-Ri during the day, so they decided to do it at night from an aircraft carrier. From what I understand, because of the dangerous mission it was, they asked for volunteers off the Navy pilots. Every pilot aboard the aircraft carrier volunteered. So while they were dispatched and heading toward the bridges, the wing commander and the captain of the aircraft carrier were pacing and just getting real nervous about this, wondering about the pilots, were searching the skies, see them come back. And the commander of the aircraft carrier, the captain of the aircraft carrier, said, "Where do we find such men?" That's where President Reagan got that. Now, as we go on, and there's a story that's given to me by Major General Dan Hahn. Well, Major General Dan Hahn was in Baghdad, and he was there when a bomb exploded in a marketplace. Then what happened? People ran for protection in all directions, and there's an American soldier standing there with his weapon at the ready position. And one little girl, 8 or 9 years old, ran up. Who did she run to when she was terrified? She ran to the American soldier. She hid behind his right leg, was clutching his right leg and peeking out, terrified and crying. A picture was taken. I've seen the picture. General Hahn has seen the picture of other veterans, but I've not been able to find it. So by describing that picture, you don't have to describe it, or I won't have to describe it anymore. That picture of the American soldier with the weapon and the little Iraqi girl hiding behind him for protection. That tells you right away. You put that picture into your mind's eye, that tells you right away who the American soldier has been, who the American soldier is today, and who the American soldier will be forever. He will be obeying the biblical command of protecting and caring for the least among us. Well, that tells it all about who the American soldier stands for. Now, as these cadets were going to receive their gold bars, they begin their journey, their military journey with promotions and all, and some all the way up to the general stars. But when they get their promotion, they get the first lieutenant bars, they take these little gold bars and they throw them into a drawer. And they forget them. But these little gold bars will not forget who you were and how you wore them when you began your military career. They will, wherever you are, whatever your rank, even if you're a general, even if you're listening to the final notes of taps, these little gold bars that you threw into a drawer and forgot have never forgotten you. And they will never, forever forget you. They will resonate deep in your heart of hearts, duty, honor, country. Now, I've got several poems that I wrote years ago during the Cold War, and pilots tend to write because we have a lot of time. When I was flying, and other pilots, throughout the years, you have a lot of time on your hands. You're in waiting room, pilot lounges, waiting for passengers, waiting for freight. So you can only drink so much coffee, sleep so much, read the 2-year-old magazine so much, so you take to writing. A lot of excellent books have been written by, for example, Ernest K. Gamm. And just about all of his books were made into movies. The High and the Mighty, well, there's some others, I've forgotten them right now, but he did every one of his movies made into a movie. Of his books were made into a movie. And so I'll start with this one. Now, this was a poem I wrote for the anniversary and for a convention and a reunion of my old bomb group. I was in World War II, and I was in the 42nd Bomb Squadron, 505th Bomb Group, 313th Bomb Wing, 21st Bomber Command, 20th Air Force. Now, that has been drilled into my head, that address. And they had a reunion, and they wanted something creative for their convention. So this one I wrote, and I will read it to you folks. It's a tribute, and I wanted the award on this poem. It is, 1,000 men will fly today while the ground crews wait and their loved ones pray for the fighting men of the 505th. They came from the cities, they came from the hills, they worked on the farms, they worked in the mills. They came when called from across the land, this band of brothers, this courageous band. Some flew the plane, some worked the line, those men who crewed the B-29, the fighting men of the 505th. They flew all night through lonely skies, they scanned the night with weary eyes. Then came the dawn and the rising sun, ahead Mount Fuji and the bombing run. Aim and drop and turn and flee, back toward home over the lonely sea, the fighting men of the 505th. Then there's another one And this one appeared in the Leather Knight magazine. And this was at the 235th anniversary of the United States government. And well, this is the official magazine of the Marine Corps. So this one won an award, and I got some cash for this, okay? And it's called Daddy's Shoes. When I was little, I would stand in Daddy's shoes. A little boy in Daddy's great big shoes. Through the years, I found a lot of Daddy's shoes. Old high-top football shoes with mud still on the cleats. When Daddy scored the touchdown that won the biggest game. Then I found the old Converse shoes he wore when he made the winning point. I found his baseball shoes with rusted cleats. When Daddy hit 380 and signed with the pros. But the shoes I treasure most are the ones I could never fill. They're in a picture taken on a muddy hill in a faraway land called Nam. Next to the picture was a medal. I asked my mom, "What is it?" She hugged me close with tears in her eyes. "It's the Medal of Honor," she whispered. She picked up the picture of the smiling Marine, forever young in dress blues. Now I'll forever try to fill my daddy's shoes. And there's another one here that was written during World War II by a young American who was flying with the British Royal Air Force, and he was in the Battle of Britain. He was a Spitfire fighter pilot. And he wrote this poem, and then 2 days later he got shot down. Never survived the war. It's become a classic. And it's been printed and reprinted and all over the world. And it's called High Flight. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things. You have not dreamed of wheeled and soared and swung within those clouds, high in the sunlight silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up, the long delirious burning blue. I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark nor evil flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high untrespassed sanctity of space, I put out my hand and touched the face of God. Now this one I wrote during the Cold War. There were terrible threats, there were bomb shelters being built. Everybody was afraid of an attack from the Russians coming over the Northern Sea. And that was just a bad time during the Cold War. And this one is called Alert. This terrible night, the city slept, safe, secure, in peace that's kept, by those who search, by those who fly, those patrolling the hostile sky. But far to the north, through the Arctic night, rose the three, the terrible flight. Hurtling over the northern sea, on they flew, the terrible three. Coming in under our radar eyes, they searched in vain those northern skies, straining eyes that scanned the screen, that searched so hard but hadn't seen. On they flew, the terrible three, hurtling in from the northern sea. Now he has them, now he sees the raider coming, a flight of three. But tonight befriends the determined three, hurtling in from the northern sea. We have a lock on bogies 3, no eye that we could see. Of course, the bombers sped, changing the city, toward the city, sleep ahead. Straining eyes watch the blip, As one they turned, as one they did. Enemy bombers now had shown, courses planned and courses flown. Radar planes flashed warnings on bombers come and now we're gone. Blasting on to the peaceful land. Flew the three, the terrible band. The three began, should one get through, well, two will fall, just one will do. Warning sounded miles away, enemy sighted, signals say. Antennas whirled and raked the night, groping for the invading flight. Now lower flew the attacking three, hurtling in from the northern sea. Missiles tried to bring them down before they reached the sleeping town. Fighters raced into the night to catch, to turn the invading fight. Though three began and two were gone, that last, the final one, thundered on. Now he sees the lights below, the city's life, the city's glow. Turning on the final path, once was life. We're going to try to do this now regularly, but there's a lot of material I've collected, stories, war stories, and all of them good war stories. Many of them, I hope, are funny. And we want to entertain you with these stories and tell you what it was like in World War II, because many, many veterans never talked about it. But later on, when somebody goaded them on or coaxed them, they did to their families. That's before they passed away. There are not many of us left anymore from World War II. And we want to keep these stories alive. That's what I'm trying to do. I've given interviews of men with the Military Officers Organization and other military organizations. I want to get fixed the record of these men because they're passing so suddenly. All of us veterans from World War II have to be in our early 90s. Of course, I'm in my mid-90s now. Anyway, I'll have these stories as we go along. And I want to thank you for listening. And please remember, duty, honor, country, and especially those men who never came back from World War II, and the few veterans that are hobbling around now. Give them a salute and tell them thank you for your service. How's that?